Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. NATO leaders reiterated their ironclad commitment to the alliance's mutual defense clause as U.S. President Donald Trump declared there was a lot of unity during the NATO meeting in Ankara, despite previous tensions over defense spending. The NATO summit in Ankara has delivered reaffirming of Article 5, describing Russia as a long-term security threat and announcing new investments in defense manufacturing, missile defense and military capabilities. The summit also comes as Ukraine faces another wave of Russian ballistic missile attacks, and allies seek to demonstrate that support for Kyiv remains sustainable over the long term. Joining us now to discuss it all is Rostyslav Khotin, senior editor for the Ukrainian service Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. Good to have you back with us.
Hello, Sasha.
So looking at the declaration, that's always very important, but what's your key sense of this summit? How does it put Ukraine in a better position than a year ago?
Yes, I think so. Now the allies admitted that Ukraine is contributor to Euro-Atlantic security, not just a receiver of security guarantees from transatlantic communities, kind of a receiver of security, but a giver of security. That Ukraine is a key country for Euro-Atlantic security and is net contributor to it. That's important thing. Second important thing is that allies pledged 70 billion euros of military aid to Ukraine for 2026, and also the same amount, 70 billion euros of military aid to Ukraine for the next year. That's also important, that Ukraine will not be abandoned, that financial aid will continue, and Ukraine will receive ammunition and arms and ammunition for the next 2 years. Also, we have to admit that despite all predictions that the allies are divided, that America is no longer committed to NATO alliance and so on and so forth, that Trump left Washington for Ankara in a bad mood and so on and so forth, all these pessimistic predictions have not been materialized, have not been realized. The allies confirmed the unity. The allies confirmed devotion to the Article 5 of NATO chapter. Attack against one is attack again against all. Despite some kind of tensions between United States and Denmark over Greenland in Ankara, despite Spain bashing from Trump for not spending enough on military purposes, defense purposes, despite still kind of grudges about that European and NATO members didn't show enough unity, enough support during Iran campaign for the United States of America. Despite all of this, the main statement was the key words were tremendous unity, even from Trump. So the NATO is united. That's the good news, and that America will stay in Europe and will be repositioning its troops according to the kind of plans in orderly manner. Also on Ukrainian side, we have to add that the key also decision was to give Ukrainians a license to produce interceptor missiles for Patriot system. That's an enormous achievement. That's indeed unexpected, that it will take not a long time for Americans to decide on that. That Trump go ahead for this, that Ukraine will be able to produce probably within a year or not a long time, PAC-3 missiles for Patriot systems, which are now so much needed in the Middle East. But the US stocks were depleted because of Iranian war. So now Ukraine will be able to produce them locally in Ukraine with American help and licensing. Also,
but on that, Rostyslav, if I may, just on that point, because I'm curious, because that's one of those big statements that we heard from Trump in his own words about this licensing for the Patriot interceptor batteries for Ukraine, that they would be potentially manufactured there. But Do you think that that will happen? I mean, is this now, in your mind, a done deal? How quickly would that kind of, if, let's say if the licensing is truly granted, as he had hinted at yesterday, how long would that take, realistically, do you think? Is this a matter of months, of a year? Or give us a little bit more of your take, how realistic and how fast that could be?
Probably during a year, up to a year it will take, as there is such expectation that it won't take long, because these interceptor missiles for Patriot systems are badly needed by Ukrainian air defenses. Just yesterday, for instance, Ukraine has no proper enough resources to intercept Russian ballistic missiles. That's the problem. Just yesterday, 2 ballistic missiles landed in Odessa on the Black Sea, killing 4 people. This night, 2 ballistic missiles from Iskander landed in Ukraine again. So Ukraine is unable to intercept Russian ballistic missiles. So it's badly needed by Ukrainian air defenses. And expectation is that the American license will be put in place, and Ukraine will be able to produce interceptor missiles for Patriots domestically very quickly, within a year. Even before that, the American decision is a clear signal to Russia that America will stay in Ukraine, with Ukraine, that America will support Ukraine further, that Ukraine won't be abandoned. So that also sends a political message to Russia and strengthens Ukrainian negotiations position during next round of talks, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. And also, in terms of what we've heard just with this licensing, if that does happen, it'll be really interesting, and that would be very significant. Looking also at that service center for Patriot missile and interceptor battery, that's also in the cards. That is also something that Poland will work on with the United States, Germany, and Sweden. So a lot of that in the future. Looking also, though, if we're looking at a bit more in the relationships as well, this was also important, that meeting between President Zelenskyy and Polish President Karol Nawrocki. Apparently these two, I mean, this has been a sensitive issue between Poland and Ukraine. Looking at that, they've met. Their words are quite diplomatic, but it seems that they've said Russia remains the primary let's say, threat for both of those countries. What do you think about those two presidents meeting? Where are we now that they have met? Where's that relationship going from here?
You know, the good thing is that they met not once but twice during NATO summit in Ankara. On first time on Tuesday, on the first day of the summit, and the second time yesterday on the second day of the summit. And the second meeting lasted quite a long time, about an hour or so, even more than an hour. So the statement by Polish President Karol Nawrocki that Russia is a common enemy, Russian Federation, as he put it, Russian Federation is a common enemy of both Ukraine and Poland. That's a good sign that Polish leader understands the current situation in which both countries are, and politically, geopolitically, and geographically, and even historically. From historic point of view, Russia was always a threat to Poland and always was a threat to Ukraine. So this realization that we have a common enemy, and in such a difficult and challenging times, and Russia is a powerful enemy, which always had a sight on Ukraine and Poland, and Polish and Ukrainian independence and sovereignty. That's a good point to notice. Also, the expectations in Ukraine now is that Poland will slightly scale down probably the commemoration of Volyn massacre victims, which falls on in the middle of July, so that it will be less amount of presumably anti-Ukrainian statements from Polish politicians and other public figures. So there is an understanding that both countries are now kind of stretching actively for sort of compromise, how to manage the situation, not to escalate, but rather to slow down and to lessen down the tensions, which are kind of very high on during latest several weeks or months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also the Prime Minister Tusk has also said that supporting Ukraine remains Poland's national security interest. So again, adding more in terms of that's a relationship that needs to build on strength. And let's see how that does develop. But those two presidents meeting, I think that was significant. Looking also, if I just get your opinion on the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, Mr. Babiš, who opted out of this massive amount of money and support for Ukraine, those 70 billion that we talked about. How significant is that of the Czech Republic not being part of this?
You know, the thing is that Andrej Babiš was campaigning during Czech parliamentary election on a platform, populist platform, and he gave so many promises to different sectors of Czech society. We will give you that, we will give you that, we will pay for that, we will pay for that. And simply, with such a populistic promises, he has no money in the budget to spend on Ukrainian military aid. Simply has no money. But nevertheless, there was a good development also from the Czech Republic, because Babiš supported Czech participation contribution to this prioritized Ukrainian requirement list, PEARL NATO program, in which European allies give money to buy American weapons and ammunition for Ukraine. So Czech Republic, for the first time, will participate in this NATO PEARL program, buying American weapons for Ukraine. But nevertheless, he opted out of this financial package of 70 billion euros annually for the next 2 years to support Ukraine militarily. So that's one sign is positive, another sign is negative, but its negative sign is coming from populist campaign on which Babiš won the parliamentary election in the Czech Republic.
Right, but then if we, as we said earlier already, a lot of new commitments, 70 billion for Ukraine, those licensing potentially for the Patriot interceptors, so a lot of positive from this summit. Let's see how that's implemented. Look, thanks so much for breaking it down for us. Always a pleasure. Rostyslav Khotin there, senior editor of the Ukrainian service RFE-RL. Thanks.
Thank you, Sasha.
And thank you for watching, but stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.